Hey guys, I want to thank you for downloading this brand new episode from the podcast C's Get Degrees. For any updates or any brand new episodes, go visit Apple iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music today. And for all the swag lovers, go visit www.etsy.com/shop/the Chad M. Smith for any brand new swag coming from both the podcast and CH brands. And for any speaking engagements for anything, go visit www.thechadmsmith.com. Once again, guys, thank you very much and enjoy this brand new episode. All right, hey guys, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to C's Get Degrees. We have Tamar Medford on the other side. Tell everyone where you're actually calling from, because I hear a little bit. I see the Dodgers cap on, but
I'm from the West Coast, so you got that, but I'm actually north of LA. I'm in Vancouver, BC, Canada, so quite a ways north.
I was gonna ask. I'm like, because I'm picking up a little bit of that, and you're kind of hearing me carry a little bit of it. So you're in Canada. I'm about 6-7 hours away from Canada, so
Nice, nice.
you're gonna hear me say out and about a little bit, but just it is what it is. But hey, welcome to the podcast, and there's many reasons why we're discussing, but the big thing what we were doing prior was talking about addiction and all that stuff. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna let you go into your story, because I know we're both recovering, and just go in depth, tell everyone kind of not the how and the whys, but just where it was, where you are, where you're converting, where you're going now, and like we said right before we started recording, how are we using that power into entrepreneurship.
Absolutely. Thank you, first of all, for having me on your show. It's an honor. So my name's Tamar Medford, and I always like to start off by just saying I had a really great childhood. And I say that because there's a lot of people in that suffer from addiction and recovery that have had a lot of trauma, and I didn't have that. Addiction does run in my family for sure. But I started drinking when I was 14, and I was so shy. I never felt like I fit in, and I just remember when I had that first drunk, I felt like my world had come into color, right? It went from black and white to color. I felt like I could be funny. People were laughing at my jokes. I'm like, this is my saving grace. This is my solution. Like, I've literally fallen in love. And unfortunately, though, when I got a taste of alcohol, drugs were in high school, and I wasn't afraid to put anything into my body. And of course, barely graduating, not because I didn't apply myself, because I wanted the next party, basically. I didn't want to miss out on anything. As my friends started to go to college, university, get married, have children, I was still worried about the next party, right? I didn't want to do all that stuff because I thought, well, I got to have fun in life. And so, unfortunately, when I hit my mid 20s, life got a little bit darker. I got into harder drugs, and I I was in some places, smoking crack in a home with people I didn't know, and that wasn't me. And when I look back now at that life, having a really good childhood, that is where addiction took me, because it didn't matter what it was. I wanted it, and I wanted it now, and I didn't care how I got it, and it never scared me at the time, right? I would just do what it took to get loaded. And, you know, as, as I grew up, I got into very codependent relationships. I also went onto extreme dieting because I was always seeking that love from external sources. The more relationships I was in, the more people, I thought that meant that I was loved, which got me into very abusive relationships. Of course, I had to date other addicts and alcoholics because I didn't want anybody calling me out on my BS, right? I was
Yeah.
like, they got to let me do my thing here. And, that ended up in assault. And, I isolated and used for 2 months straight and slipped into a severe depression after that. And of course, I thought, well, what's going to fix that? I'm going to get married, right? Because that's what society says. I'm going to get a car. I'm going to get a condo. I'm going to get married. Like that will make it all better. And of course, I married an alcoholic. And in and out of that 9 year time span, I was severely depressed. I was very suicidal. I had attempted it a couple times, never successful. I thought I'll just use so many drugs that hopefully I won't wake up in the morning. And I always woke up. So obviously, I had a greater purpose in life. And I just remember, the end of 2011, I was 215 pounds. I was about $75,000 into debt. I was really just spiritually bankrupt. My marriage was falling apart, and I just wanted to end my life. And I sat on the floor with a bottle of pills, and I just thought, I'm done. I'm so tired of hurting the people I loved. And that's how I felt every time I had felt suicidal. And I don't know what happened. I was sitting with my dog. I had a little pug, and he was sitting beside me, and he was the cutest thing ever. But I just remember him looking up at me and tilting his head and kind of giving me like, Mom, what are you doing? Like, come on, let's go outside for a walk kind of thing. And something came over me, and I totally believe it was, divine intervention. I had this voice in my head that just said, come on, like, give this one more chance. Like, this is not your time yet. And so in 2012, I actually did what I thought I should do. And I thought, okay, if I lose weight, right, if I lose 75 pounds, because I was 215 pounds, that will fix my life and that will make it better. Not once did I think maybe I have a problem with drugs and alcohol, right? And I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to hire a personal trainer. I'm going to go to the gym. And with most addicts, we go into everything. We swap one addiction for another. So I ate chicken, broccoli, and rice every single day for a year. I had one, cheat meal every single weekend. I followed everything to a T, but the one area I still hadn't worked on was my alcoholism. And I would actually try and control it, right? Because we tend to switch from different substances. And I'm like, okay, perfect. I'm going to have 3 beer because I was that, star student. I wanted that gold star all the time. And I would have 3 beers a night, which is just like a first 10 minutes usually for me. And then I would chug half a bottle of NyQuil. So I would pass out, which there's alcohol in, by the way, for anybody who doesn't know. And I would do that, basically Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I'd be shouting it from the rooftops. Like I only had 9 beer this weekend, which to an alcoholic is not very much. I mean, that's maybe an hour time span typically, but I was so incredibly proud of it. And the interesting part is that the trainer that I hired was actually in recovery. And so we talked one night and she said, hey, if you're ever wondering if you need help, I'm in recovery. And I'm like, oh, I don't need that, right? Like, what are you talking about? That's not my problem. I'm drinking 3 or 9 beers every weekend. Like, I've got this under control. But of course, the first weekend that I went outside of that plan and outside of that accountability, I had a really terrible last bender. I don't remember the weekend. I brought one bottle of wine with me and I thought, I'm going to show that I'm in control now. And the first night, my ex and I had the bottle of wine, I had a box of wine, I had a case of beer, and we ran a $200 bar tab that first night. Because that's what happens, right? When you don't have that accountability, it's just, I can't stop. And it was a blackout weekend. And so I got help then. I finally realized that, okay, maybe I do have a problem. And I honestly believe, and I live for, I built that solid foundation first in recovery because that was probably the most important thing that I ever did was looking at my life and going, okay, I have a problem, right? Because I know that if I don't recognize that and I think that one day I'll be okay to pick up a drink again, it can go downhill real fast because I will turn into the table dancer that doesn't remember the table dancing episode at the bar. And I didn't want that to happen. So I did everything it took in early recovery, even though I didn't want to, because I didn't think I was like people, right? I was classy. I was a classy alcoholic. And there's no such thing, by the way.
Yeah, all you guys that here's a little hint. Us addicts know how to hide it very, very well.
Yes.
We can operate normally, even though on the back end we have an addiction issue. None of y'all will know about it because we hide it very, very well.
Exactly. And I had spent years doing that, but it was building that foundation. And then I got really complacent for about 5 to 6 years. And I thought, okay, I have the great career. Because I was a functioning alcoholic. There was periods in my life when I was using harder drugs that I was not so much. But for the most part, I was a very functioning alcoholic. And like you said, I could hide it really well, right? People, I did not know until I wrote my first book the degree of my addiction. Um, but I got complacent because I thought, okay, I have the good job. My marriage actually fell apart. I went bankrupt after I got sober. So I literally had lost everything, but I felt like I had gained this fresh start. But I knew there was something missing because I always had this burning desire to do more. I just had those beliefs that who am I to do this stuff? Because I'm an alcoholic, right? I let that define me for so long. And 2019, I actually was inspired by my podcast coach to start the podcast. That led into me meeting other entrepreneurs, which said, why don't you coach? Like, you've got almost 25 years of addiction experience. I say I have a doctor's in addiction because, I have so many different facets of addiction that I've experienced. But they're like, you could actually help people with this. And I started to dig into that a little bit, right? And then, so I started doing coaching. I got my life coaching certificate. And then COVID hit and I wasn't traveling for business. So I'm like, okay, I got to go all in. And I literally became addicted to wanting to become an entrepreneur because I realized at that moment that my addictive past and the experience was just life experience training me for what I was supposed to do today, right? What my higher purpose was. And I had always had faith. Right after I discovered a higher power, I was like, I have faith that my needs are going to be met and I'm going to be guided in the right direction. And it just clicked. Right. And so I became, you and I talked about this before the interview, is you become addicted to something completely different, but it's a good feeling. And in less than a year, I started my coaching business. I became a performance consultant. I wrote 2 best-selling books, and I quit my full-time day job to pursue my passion of helping people in recovery really live up to their potential.
Yeah, and I'm just smiling because I think me and you are probably not much different in age range because I started. Okay, so I'm 35 tomorrow. No, 2 days from now. So I started hammering the bottle well at 13.
Mm-hmm.
So 13 to 33. What is that? 20 years? Yeah. So 20 years worth of drinking underneath my belt. Plus, obviously, you have a few layers underneath that addiction. So probably 20 years worth of porn addiction underneath that. And then obviously you get the divorce and all that stuff. So I'm just sitting there smiling because I'm like, God, this is like literally the same story I have, except for the hard stuff.
Yeah.
Hard stuff for me was weed, but I wasn't addicted to that. I rather have the high from the alcohol versus that. So like for me, my brain's opposite, and I can go in depth here because I don't do it anymore. But like that would actually, my mom, my sister, and I have this weird brain thing that if we go under the influence of like getting our teeth put out, anesthesia, and I'm gonna put like weed in there, we actually, our body wants to fight it. So like we go in, we're like, oh, this is fun. And all of a sudden our brain kicks in and it's like, no, 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 no. And it's like, we're that tweaking person is what they call it. It's like, why are you tweaking? Well, because our brain doesn't want it. Yeah. But when we're looking at like, you're just going and going and going, all of a sudden you're like all in. And remember I was telling you about something in January, like December, all of a sudden it just clicked.
Yeah.
I pretty much kept seeing the word all in from many people. Like there's been a repeating pattern since January, like all in, all in, all in. Mm-hmm. And finally I'm just like, screw it. January 1st, I'm like, I'm all in on this. I still have my job. I don't even focus on my job. They already know I'm mentally checked out, but that's why I'm like, you know what, like even with this beautiful gift that's getting dropped tomorrow, and we are recording on Tuesday, and this is occurring March 8th. The gift's occurring March 9th. The gifts occur March 10th. So when this comes out, guys, it's gonna be a few weeks after. But um, yeah, there's a fee that comes with that, and I'm like talking to all my family. My sister's like, "No, you gotta do it. You gotta do it. You gotta do it." I'm like, "What do you mean you gotta do it?" I'm like, "Sis, it's gonna wreck the budget." She goes, "I don't care." She goes, "I know you have a budget. I know we're like anal staying to it," but she's like, "That gift got dropped on your lap that no one in this world close to us has ability to do." So she goes, "You have to take advantage of it." I'm like, "Okay." So I came into this podcast world just goofing around, coming in as one to talk about all the drunk stories. And you probably entered that way too. People are like, "Jump in, have all your stories. This is fun. Woo-hoo-hoo." And then it turned into more maturing now into addictions, personal stories, obviously finding God and going that way. I have a lot of stories with that. And it's more like people are looking at this as more of like a self-help positive. Like, I never noticed how positive I am now, but I'm more grateful to wake up every morning now.
Yeah.
So I just like the best way of saying it, I just do me. I mean, I really don't care what my neighbors say anymore. I don't care what my parents say. I'm just going to do me and sound like elementary school how I worded it, but this is me and this is what I'm going to bring and I'm going to have fun doing it.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that as the farther you go into recovery, the more you learn to love yourself. And like you said, I love waking up in the morning. When I was had my full-time corporate career, I was waking up at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning to do this stuff because this stuff is what gets me out of bed every day, right? The fact that I've been given this gift of sobriety and now I can help other people, hopefully inspire them to want to take this life too. Because I know when I first came into recovery, I was like, I'm not like you people. Like, I would compare myself and I would look at people who were homeless and it's like, well, and I remember the first time I talked to a friend of mine and she's like, why are you comparing yourself? And I said, well, they're a lot worse off than I am. Like, and I think a lot of people don't actually get help because they see themselves as semi-functioning, even though they know that when they drink, their life gets out of control, right? Because that's what happened. It was fun sometimes, but the next day it was like, oh crap, who do I go to apologize, right? And I think a lot of people don't get help because they do compare themselves. And I can tell you now that some of the coolest people I've met in recovery were homeless, were on the streets. Like their bottom was different than mine, but essentially our bottom is when we stop digging, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I had hit many lower bottoms than that, but being able to realize that that is actually a gift, right? We've come out of that now. And, we've got faith that, and it's just like, you talk about finding God. That was the first thing. I was so resistant to that. I'm like, nope. No, I'm going to skip all that stuff. Like there is not a chance. And somebody's like, just give it a try, right? Your own perception. You have to have faith that things are going to work out. And so I was like, okay, I'm willing to do what it took because I didn't want to go back. And she's like, Tamar, I want you to go home and I want you to pray that I'm going to take you to church on Sunday. And I was like, oh, I felt really uncomfortable, right? And because of
Yeah.
my
Sitting in the
upbringing.
back of the room trying to hide from everyone.
I know. I'm like, don't talk to me. Don't talk to me. But she's like, I want you to pray that you can let go and let God because she goes, you're going to get loaded again. It's not if, it's when. And so I'm like, fine. So I went home. I got down on my knees. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And I prayed and I said, please, I have to go to church. It was have to, right? Because I'm being forced to. I have to go to church on Sunday. I don't know what to say here, but please, in like big shiny lights, like give me some sort of sign that you're there, right? So I did everything that she had said. And we went to church and there was a cute, actually, youth pastor that was sitting in. So that was great because I was like, okay, perfect. Like you have my attention now. And early recovery stuff,
Yeah.
And he started talking and he walked over to the side of the stage I'm at. And he's like, if you're in denial that you've got problems and you're having a hard time letting go and letting God, you're in the right place. And literally everything that I had prayed about he talked about. And I sat there and my friend's looking at me because she knows exactly what she asked me to do. And I just started sobbing uncontrollably because I felt this presence in me that I'd never felt before. And ever since then, I've believed that, I mean, I'm not dead. So, first of all, there's obviously something looking out for me because I should have been dead, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And I'm gonna bring up this question that we had actually last Sunday, and it was we're gonna get a little faithy here, but it was because I go to Life Church, which I'm sure might be going up your way, but it's a large branch, and I think the head of it's down in Dallas, but it's a larger, the new updated version styles, the live bands and all that stuff. We're in a little more of a pocket church, is what they call it. So it's like we sit down in tables, discuss all that stuff, and if I remember correctly, I could be wrong, I could be off just a little bit on the question, but it was talking about as a Jesus person, are you a stoic? Or are you happy go lucky? I'm like, wait a minute here. I came in stoic and I'm over on this side. They're like, why are you so happy? I'm like, I'm not the happy, bubbly church person yet. I'm like, I'm getting there. So I'm like, I just smile and know that I have been blessed with a gift. I mean, I there's some inner, family members and stuff, not okay, church family that poked the bear a little bit with me and her. She's like a mom to me, so like we can go past the little boundaries of it, but no, like when I sobered up in November 2008, 19,
Mm-hmm.
19. So I'm a year and a half into it, I think, year and a quarter. And how you were saying is how she was wording it was, it's not if you're going to do it, it's when you're going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I came to I wake up, obviously I'm very happy and all that stuff, but I came to the realization that I can have an NA beer, which has a zero, like a drop in there. But I'm starting to notice like my body will almost grab that because I'm in the upper Midwest, which beer is very, very heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And I pretty much told everyone around me, I'm like, if you're gonna bring mixed drinks next to me, just keep them away because I can pick up that smell. I was literally in a hockey game in that $2 Bud Light nights, and I'm not bullshitting you how this occurred. We were 4 rows up, and there's a whole line of college kids sitting there drinking. I would smell them 10 feet away, going down this row. I'm like sitting there shaking because it was my first time coming back after cleaning up because I would go there and have, you have your beer, you watch hockey, whatever the normal
Mm-hmm.
routine. And I'm sitting there like shaking in the chair. And my mom's like, what's going on? Like, I'm just literally like just gripping. She's like, what's going on? I'm like, I can smell that. She's like, you serious? I said, no, I can smell exactly what that is. And I know what my mind wants right now. And she kind of just looked. She's like, I never heard it that way. I'm like, seriously, I'm like, I'm okay. But I'm like, just keep the beer away from me right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, I cleaned up in November. I went to this church in February. To me, I didn't take an AA route. I think what I might end up doing is actually helping AA down the road. But I went to the church first because the way I looked at it is either way, you're going to be around people that are experiencing stuff. But to me, I want all the foundation first. And then I can like get myself situated, get a lot of people to look after me, all that, kind of just build that foundation correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And then move into, not saying I'm going to go AA as like people in the thing, but like look as AA as that second option of saying, hey guys, I was one, I'm here to help you guys, all that stuff. So I'm looking more of AA as more of like a teaching moment versus like church was the full like addiction, fighting the addiction side of it. So
Mm-hmm. Well, I think with, in terms of support networks and stuff and church, I mean, I think everybody knows there's so many different ways to get clean and sober today, right? And there's not one right or wrong method, but I think faith is definitely a good aspect of that because I know that I needed that. But I think it also runs into entrepreneurship, right? When, we have this gift, like you said, And when you start surrounding yourself with people, and you mentioned this before our interview, right? I always surround myself with people who have what I want, who are always a step up, because I'm like, okay, I want to find out how you got there. And, when I first got into, I would say very, very early pre-entrepreneurship, I started hanging out with coaches. I started hanging out with, podcast hosts and people who taught people how to become podcasters. And I'm like, okay, I just want to absorb everything you're doing. And I remember one of my podcast mentors, she's like, hey, I have this entrepreneur group. And I thought, well, I only have a podcast now. And she goes, that's okay. And I remember the first mastermind I joined, she's like, Tamar, do you have an email opt-in? And I was like, a what? And she goes, okay, you don't have an email opt-in, right? But that was how green I was. Like, I didn't even know what an email opt-in was. And she's like, we're going to teach you. And they literally taught me, this group of, entrepreneurs literally taught me how to start a business. They taught me how to conduct myself, and they inspired me to do the coaching. Like, these people brought me up, and now I'm the one that gets to help the new people, which is really trippy because they're like, Tamar, you've done this. Like, what do you think? And I'm like, hey, a year ago, I didn't even know what an email opt-in is, right? But I think it's important when you're on this journey to find people who have what you want and do what they do.
Yeah, and I'm going to chime in exactly what we're talking about prior to recording. So I have a very, very good network of friends that started me podcasting first. It's the same people that started me that where I'm going tomorrow. And I get there and I got the office all set up last week. And then obviously I'm like sitting there, I'm like, okay, I want something to project my energy into this podcast. Because I'm like, it's the first time in my life, it's my own business. Like, I'm not restricted to put anything on those damn walls. So I put a whole wall of guitar players up. On the other side, I put James Bond in a Dodge Challenger. I'm like, and all of a sudden I get a text. He's like, whoa. He's like, dude, that's awesome. Like, the guy that started me. And we're sitting there talking and we're setting it all up. He goes, two things. He goes, I want to be part of that coffee show that you guys are just doing on YouTube. So I'm co-host with that one on the coffee show. And he goes, secondly, we're all trying to figure out how to take your podcast from, let's say, level 2 to like a level 4. And he goes, we're gonna have to bring you live. We're gonna have to put you in the studio and bring you live. I'm like, excuse me? Because obviously we're in this routine where people in this base get so used to either StreamYard or Zooms. Mm-hmm. And then we have our own little routine behind the scenes that we do to get it prepped up, launched. Like we said, we're one-man shows. And I looked at his wife. I texted his wife for other reasons. We'll leave that for a different day, which is a good reason. But I'm like, I'm excited, but I'm scared. Not scared, just it's the butterflies. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, it's not the bad butterflies. It's the good butterflies, because I know it's pushed me to do better and kind of level up and go to the next level. But I also know, like, everyone there, we have trust with everyone to where they're going to be like, hey, we're going to push you to be a better person, better entrepreneur, better speaker, better public speaker, and it's the same thing. They're like, hey, you tried this before. Hey, go live. I'm like, shit. And they're like, hey, put a mic on. And then they're the same ones I said, hey, I know you have stand-up comedy on your list to do. I know you have open mic night. So all of a sudden, randomly on Instagram, it's like, hey, look, Chad, open mic night. I'm like, son of a bitch. So it's going to be, like I said, it's a gift. And I'm not going to push to change that gift. I'm going to push to change myself. But when you have gifts drop on your lap, people do not fight them. Mm-hmm. And she's smiling how I say that. You don't fight them.
No, you gotta get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because I don't know about you, but when you get like those butterflies, and it's not a bad nervous, it's almost like you get so far out of your comfort zone that you're riding this wave and it's a rush. Like, you're just like, okay, I know this is new. I know this feels scary, but I can't wait to see what comes out of this. Even if it doesn't work out, you just kind of know that it's going to be okay, that it's going to work out the way it's supposed to. Yeah. And it's a rush.
And I think what it is with us, that we're so used to recording and editing, And I had some stand-up comics that joined my show, I think 4 or 5 months ago, and I'm still good friends with them anyways. And he goes, shows are awesome, but they're edited. He goes, here's the thing that everyone needs to figure out, like if they want to do stand-up or live stuff. He's like, when that switches to live, he goes, you can't edit it. So you got to be on your game and you got to get used to it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's coming. I'm just smiling saying it's coming, but we're enjoying it. I don't know what's going to happen, and to be honest, I really don't care, in a good way, because for once in my life, I'm actually, a year and a half, I'm in a very good spot. So usually all the good, there's gonna be bad, I get it, but that stuff's in the good window. So we ain't gonna change it. We're just let it kind of roll and just kind of shoot from the hip when it comes to that stuff. So we are running out of absolute topics here. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna edit that part out, but tell everyone where we can find you, and then get directed. And then, is there any business or anything that you're trying to launch in the next month or so?
You can reach me on my website. So it's the easiest way. All my social media handles are there, www.theroadforward.ca. And weekly, I actually host a purpose to empowerment workshop. So I help people in recovery discover what their purpose is. And I take them through some concepts that have helped me as well really, figure out goals that align with that purpose they have, because a lot of people have problems identifying what they're capable of. So I run that every single week. It's on my website as well, so you can join that absolutely free.
All right, no problem. Thank you very much. Thanks for being a guest. And like I said, we're going to look forward to having some fun in the future here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, no problem.